Hi, everyone. It's Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media. This week's Rutgers Rant is brought to you by the New Brunswick Development Corporation. A big thank you to our sponsor and to all of our listeners for the continued support. Now let's get to the show.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights. With your host, Steve Politi, and Rutgers insiders Keith Sargent and James Cratch. Let's start shopping.
All right, hello, everybody. Steve Politi here, NJ Advanced Media. Thanks for joining us at the Rutgers Rant. We're back after a bye week, a much-needed bye week, fellas. I don't know what you did with your football-free weekend, although I have to tell you, so you think, all right, this is a good opportunity not to watch a bad football game on Saturday, and yet there I was in the seventh overtime of Illinois Penn State. What am I doing with my life? I said, what is this? There's got to be something else. Like, I got to go outside, run around, play with the kids. Why am I watching this? I know you were watching, Cratch. You had to be watching.
I was out and about. I was watching on my phone, and I was actually signed up to a bar, and a guy next to me also had it on their phone. And we looked at each other, and we're just like, why are we both watching this on this beautiful day in New York City? Like,
life choices.
Life choices.
Yeah.
What a debacle for the sport. I mean, I'm sure we'll get to it, but every member of that committee that said, let's have a 2-point shootout, everyone should resign in disgrace now.
Well, the game might not have ended otherwise. Were you watching it, Sarge, or did you actually take Saturday off?
I took Saturday off.
Good for you.
Yeah, I actually, tried to spend some time with my family. So
wow, what a brave choice. Novel idea. Well played. All right, so we got a lot to talk about. We get the bye week. We'll get into Illinois, Penn State, Illinois in general, everything related to the Scarlet Knights. But, I guess we should start with, after taking the week off, are you as down on Rutgers as you were on Sunday morning when you were thinking about the Northwestern game, or has the week given you some perspective where you're like, all right, it was a bad game in Evanston, but maybe not as bad as we made it out at the time? What do you think, Cratch?
I'm about the same. I mean, I think that they've kind of fallen back to earth, and they are the team that I think a lot of us expected them to be going to this season. I think that, look, you started at 3-0, not having to play. Now you're 0-4 in the Big Ten. You've been competitive for the most part in these games, except Ohio State, but they don't have all the pieces they need to kind of get over the hump, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I would say that I'm about where I was when we drove back from Evanston to the O'Hare that night. They are what I kind of expected they were to be. It was a kind of an interesting winding road to get there, but they're pretty much the 4-8, 5-7 team I thought they would be coming into the season.
Sarge, you there as well?
Yeah, I mean, I thought after a 3-0 non-conference start, I think I thought. I mean, I said it. Yeah, I thought they were headed toward a bowl. I probably have to temper that now and say, we'll get more on the win-loss predictions the rest of the way later. But I think it's gonna be a challenge to get to a bowl game. So from that end, yeah, I think I am a little disappointed by how they started the season, in Big Ten play. That being said, I do think that there's some, a couple winnable games left on the schedule just based on what we've seen from around the Big Ten.
And I guess none of us want to relive that game. I mean, it was just a debacle on multiple levels, coaching, offensive, defensive. I mean, it was just not a well-played football game. Greg Schiano came out and admitted it afterward. I guess the question now is, Cratch, a bye week, did they get healthy enough that would be a significant upgrade for the team? And the second part of that is, what can they change during the bye? What are we to see differently when they play at Illinois that gives you an idea that maybe the second half of the season can be different?
Well, I think on the offensive line, if you can get Raekwon O'Neal healthy, and if you can pull the trigger and put Gus Zielinskis at center, put Crimin at one of the guard spots, that might give you your best offensive line combination that available on your roster. I think that it didn't really get a lot of traction. Obviously, it was a blowout, a lopsided game, ugly game, happening in the end. Them putting Gus in at center, I think, was kind of a signal of they are really they've done a lot to shake up this line. This would be the biggest shakeup yet. I think that's an intriguing path to move forward. I just think you're going to see a lot of young guys playing, not because it's a youth movement, let's get them experience, because they are proving that they're the best players on the roster. Greg Schiano's trying to win. He's not trying to get experience for 2022. So then we're going to see a lot more of that for the offense. I mean, they just have to find ways to generate, be able to run the ball, quick. There's only so many things they can do at this point. I mean, it kind of is what it is. But I think we're going to see a lot of young players try to sell that offensive line, get as healthy as you can be, and go from there.
Sarge, I know you know where I'm going with this next about changes coming out of the bye week. Kind of about how the sausage is made, folks, about how journalism is done. I didn't make this trip to Evanston, so I'm kind of like, what am I going to write? And Sarge just kind of grabs me through the foam, by the neck and says, the only thing people want to talk about is Gavin Wimsatt and when that kid's going to play. And, to your right in that, Sarge, I wrote a column saying that this is the time to get him onto the field. And it was the perfect column topic in that 50% of the fans were like, absolutely, I'm so glad someone finally said this. And the other 50% were, you're a total blathering idiot. It was like right down the middle. Some fans think he'll get killed. Some fans think, why the hell not? I mean, do you think there's a chance we're going to see this kid, or we'll see a different quarterback, period, against Illinois?
I think I might have been on the one side of the blathering idiot, but that wasn't for the column people idiot. It's just for the record.
It was just in general. I hear
you. Do I think? Yes, I think we're going to see him. I wasn't at practice last week. I was off crutches at practice. Even if we were, I don't know if we would have been able to glean much from it. But I think, I think over the next 5 games, I think we're going to see Gavin Wimsatt. Yeah, I think I've said this all along. I don't think you can go into 2022 not knowing what he is and getting him a little bit of experience, because he's going to be the quarterback in 2022. I think that's, pretty clear. So I think we're going to see him. I think, it would stand to reason that maybe, you get his feet wet. I don't think at any point they're just going to hand him the offense altogether and bench Noah Vedral. I think we're going to see some sort of, mix of what we saw last year, a little bit of maybe, throw in, the backup quarterback at various points and whatever. And Noah Vedral has proven he's a malleable kid from the standpoint that he'll be able to probably take that in a stride. So I think at some point, maybe this week, I think we'll see Wimsatt. I think we'll see maybe a combination of Vedral, Wimsatt the rest of the way.
Right. This game was the Northwestern game was the first time I really did feel like, and I've been on Team Vedral from the start. I thought he was an upgrade. I thought he was by far the best choice going into the season. That game was the first time there were just a couple of throws where you're like, all right, this kid does not have the physical skills here. I mean, he underthrew Melton on the one bomb. He underthrew him again when it would have been a touchdown that could have tied the game at that point. Where do you think they stand right now in the quarterback going into this week?
I think that Vedral's a starter. He's going to stay the starter. I think that they truly believe that Cole Snyder and Evan Simon are like even, and it's like either or. They'll put either in a game. Frankly, I don't get that, because as I've written and we've said in the podcast, every time Cole Snyder takes the field, he looks good. And he looks better than Evan Simon, frankly, from what we've seen. We haven't seen as much of Evan Simon, but Cole Snyder just seems to be the farther ahead quarterback. So I don't understand why they keep on going back and forth with them. And to go to Sarge's point, I think my gut tells me we're going to see Wimsatt at some point this year. I don't know when. I don't think it's going to be substantial. I don't think he's going to start a game. I think it's going to be a controlled package setup. The 2 dates I look forward to, one, Indiana is like a 2.5 hour drive from Owensboro, Kentucky. I don't know if that sentimentality plays into what Greg Schiano and Sean Gleason are thinking, but I know for a fact there are a lot of people in Owensboro who bought tickets to that Indiana game, figuring weeks ago, that if Gavin was going to play this year, he was going to be on the field by then. So that's the one thing. And I also think the season finale against Maryland, which could potentially be 2 teams that are not going to a bowl game, just playing for pride, I think that's a spot where you could see him. I don't think you're going to see him against Illinois. I don't think you're going to see him against Wisconsin, because at this point, especially if Rutgers loses to Illinois on Saturday, Wisconsin is their chance to make a statement this year. That's going to be the game they have a chance to potentially pull an upset. And I don't think you're going to see him in Penn State. So I think Indiana or the season finale, that's the 2 spots where I would kind of look for him.
All right. Well, Kratz, then why? Number one, do we know why Snyder was the first quarterback off the bench against Northwestern? And number two, I'm sorry, Simon was the first quarterback off the bench. Will we see one of those two guys against Illinois?
So apparently it's literally just like it's like it was his turn, basically. Maybe he had a better week of practice, but apparently they think those two guys are interchangeable. I don't think we're going to see either of them on Saturday against Illinois unless it's a blowout either way, or Noah gets hurt, which, look, that's becoming a real issue. This is 2 straight games now where he hasn't been physically able to finish the game. And on Saturday at Northwestern, Simon goes in 4:47 left, down 2 touchdowns. That's a winnable football game at any level.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, that's becoming an issue too. Like, how much longer can Noah Vedral get knocked down, go to the injury tent, and then come back?
All right. Before we dive into true or false, give us an update in general on the injuries, Kratz. I mean, who's going to be back? Who's going to be close to back? And who are we not going to see this week?
I think Raekwon O'Neal will be back. Sarge, you pop in if I'm forgetting anyone. Aaron Cruikshank, I think, might be longer term. Max Melton, longer term. Tyreek Maddox-Williams, I think, is kind of wait and see. He was there in an emergency capacity at Northwestern, so you'd have to hope 2 weeks off. He'll be back. Same thing with Avery Young, Patrice Renee. But, yeah, am I forgetting anyone, Sarge?
No, I think you got it. Cruikshank's the guy who I think they're going to need to see, because that offense is not the same without him.
All right. Let's dive into true or false. We've got a lot of good topics here. You guys know how this works. Here we go. True or false? Rutgers won't win again this season. Kratz, true or false?
False.
Sarge?
False.
False. I go false as well. We're not that negative, folks, on where this is going. True or false? Rutgers will win one more game this season. Kratz, true or false?
True.
True. He's got the 1 win, 1 out of 5. Sarge, 1.
Is it 1 or not? Or
no, it's 1. One more game.
1. I'll say false.
False. Okay, I'm going false as well. True or false? Rutgers will win 2 more games this season. Kratz, you're out. So what do you got, Sarge?
True. 2.
True. I'm sticking with that as well. True. That's what I said before the season. I'm going to stick with it now. Rutgers has 5 games remaining, and they're all winnable. Kratz, do you agree with that statement? True or false?
True.
True. Sarge?
I know where you're going with it. I'll say false.
I'm going to say false too, but it's close, though. Penn State does not look like a good football team in that game against Illinois. True or false? Art Sikowski would be the starting quarterback this game for Rutgers if he stuck around. Kratz, true or false?
False.
Sarge?
False.
Yeah, that's a false one, guys. He would not be starting. I agree with you. True or false? Throw open the playbook. It's trick play season. Kratz, is it time for Sean Gleason to get creative? True or false?
It's definitely time for him to get creative, but I don't know if gadget plays are necessarily the way to do so. I'll say false.
Didn't you write a column like a month ago saying it's time to stop the trick plays?
Fans hated that one too. Yeah. Come on. I'm not going to trick myself with reaction to columns.
I'll say true. I like the trick plays.
It might, I might change my mind on that one. It might be time to think they clearly can't line up and beat people, so true might be the answer there. True or false? This is the easiest game left on the schedule. Do you agree with that, Kratz?
False.
Sarge?
False.
I'm going true. I think it definitely is. We can dive right into that one in a minute. But first, true or false? The overtime system is fine the way it is. Kratz, why don't you tell us how you feel about that? True or false?
That's a big, hefty false.
Sarge?
That's false.
It is false, but it was weird. I kind of like weird things. When things get kind of wacky, it's interesting. But you were really against that, Kratz. You were fired up on Twitter.
Yeah, I just think it's a joke. It's just like, first off, I've never understood why we have this issue. Like, if in a regular season, if it's a tie, who cares? Like, it makes it interesting, the standings, chaos, everything. But yeah, it's very simple. First 2 overtimes, as is. Third overtime, either you score a touchdown if you go for 2, or you kick an extra point, take a 7-point lead, take a 10-yard penalty on defense, and then the other team obviously has the ability to tie it there. And if it's still tied after 3, it's over. Tie. Go home.
Yeah. No.
Because here's the thing. Here's the thing. Penn State has 2 losses that both have an asterisk attached to them. They lost their quarterback against Iowa, this travesty against Illinois. I'm not no one should cry for Penn State, but they have 2 Big Ten losses. What happens if they somehow run the table and beat Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State? You're going to have Penn State at 10-2, which probably can't win the East because chances are that one of those teams, Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State, are all undefeated in the Big Ten. So as long as they only lose to Penn State, they would win the division, one of those 3. And then you're going to have Penn State that can't get into the playoff because they have 2 losses.
Right, but they also don't pass the eye test. Did you see anything about Penn State that made you think that they're possibly going to beat Ohio State, Michigan State? I mean, did you see anything in that game?
I didn't, but this has been a chaotic year.
Yeah, so that's true. And that goes back to the other point about the 5 games. I mean, I don't think there's there might be they're good teams, but there's no very good team. I mean, Rutgers has played the 3 best teams on its schedule already. I'm convinced of that. Penn State, has not looked functional the last couple weeks. We're talking about Illinois like this is, they had 38 passing yards against Penn State. I get it. They ran the ball really well, but that's a very one-dimensional team. Wisconsin, we know, is not any good. Maryland, we know, is not any good. I mean, these are 5 very mediocre teams left, Sarge.
Yeah, it goes back to what we've said all along. Like, I thought going into the year that Rutgers had the front line talent. The one thing, and I did leave this out there, but the injuries are the thing that are starting to pile up on this team, and we've seen that. Maybe in a couple of years, once Graciano is able to recruit and is able to build, a Big Ten caliber roster, which he clearly did not inherit. Maybe they'll be able to overcome some of these injuries, but that's the one thing where you're looking at these Big Ten games stacking, one by one. I think that's the thing that really ended up haunting him at Northwestern. The playing Ohio State, Michigan State back to back took a toll on them physically. Maybe the bye week helps. Maybe they'll be a little bit more prepared to be able to handle the final stretch of the season. But the injuries are the thing that again, I do think that there's some winnable games on this schedule. I think, to be clear, I think the Maryland game is probably the most winnable of the remaining, followed by Illinois. But, I just have to see, Rutgers, whether or not they're able to – I don't know if they had the depth to overcome these injuries or, and the physical pounding. That's the one thing where I say, I don't think they're going to make a bowl just based on that.
They just haven't been a good fundamental football team. Correct. I mean, that's how you look at it. They're not blocking well. They're not rushing the passer well. They're not defending the pass. They're not doing anything
well in key spots.
Well. Right.
No, there's not many things this team. They punt really well. That's about it.
Right. I was watching the NFL once again. I come back to it all the time. Watching the Giants game. These guys can't do it. They can't do it. Korsak does. He's going to be an NFL kicker. You guys watch. All right. Let's dive into insider questions, shall we? Once again, thanks for subscribing. You guys have provided us with some great topics. Most of them are now basically the same topic because of where the season is, but appreciate your questions. I'm going to start with Matt and Randolph because we've kind of danced around a little bit. Matt wants to know where does everyone stand with their football win predictions? It's amazing how Vegas picked ruthlessly to have probably Rutgers to have 4.5 wins. That sure looks about right if they get the 4 wins. Will that happen? Kratz, you said one. You think they've got 1 more in them? Sarge, you and I agree they've got 2 more in them. I mean, is that where you're sticking with right now?
I do. I think they will beat Maryland in the season finale. Go 4-8.
Which 2 do you think they're going to win then, Sarge?
I'm taking this week. I'm taking Rutgers, Illinois. I think that they'll be able to. Crash just rolled his eyes, folks. This is not a video. Wow. Crash. Wow. Jeez. I can't wait to see the prediction come Friday.
Holy cow.
So, yeah, I think Rutgers wins at Illinois, and then I think the Maryland game, I think, is extremely winnable.
Yeah, I said before this season I thought they were going to beat a team that you wouldn't expect them to beat and lose to a team that you wouldn't expect them to lose to. I'm hoping that I might as well stay with that because they certainly lost to a team I didn't think they were going to lose to in Northwestern. So, I will reserve the team, which team I think they will beat that they haven't that they weren't expected to beat yet. But I'm going to stay with 5 as well. All right, next question.
Hey, Rutgers Rant listeners, it's Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media. We appreciate you supporting this podcast and the sponsors who help us continue doing it. This week's podcast is brought to you by the New Brunswick Development Corporation. If you listen to this show, you love Rutgers. And if you love Rutgers, you know the positive impact that DevCo has made on the campus and its community. We thank the New Brunswick Development Corporation for its continued support and for helping make this podcast possible. Now back to the show.
Am I allowed? This is a great question from a fan of the podcast who's also up to be one of the top 10 fans in Rutgers. I won't drop his name, but you probably can figure it out. Am I allowed to be a little annoyed in year 1 that Brett Bielema waltzed into a top 10 Penn State and won, and Mel Tucker has a top 10 team while Rutgers got beat by 2 touchdowns by Northwestern? I guess the point being that other teams in the Big Ten have found ways to win games that they're not supposed to win, whereas Rutgers, once again, has not done that in many moons. I guess, is that the other side of this, Kratz? Can fans be a little frustrated that you see results like the one in as ugly as it was, Illinois won at Penn State?
Yes. I mean, look, I think totally fans have every right to be frustrated. Of course they should, especially since last year with the surprise way that they played, people thought this was going to be another big step forward this year. The one thing I will say is Michigan State, they had recruited much better than Rutgers had. So I think I crunched numbers in a film review off the top of my head. Their average recruiting class, from the Ash era to when Greg got here was like 33 and 33rd in the country every year. Rutgers was like pushing 60. So I think Mel Tucker was able to use the transfer portal, but he had a much stronger foundation to build upon. And as for Illinois, I think a lot of people forget about the fact that this is a team, a lot of the guys from that 2019 bowl team that beat Wisconsin are still on the roster.
Yeah.
And we've seen it, we've seen it the last few years. We're going to see it again on Saturday. Illinois runs the ball extremely well. They're prolific. They did it against Penn State. They've done it against Rutgers. They're going to do it again on Saturday. So that also has to be taken into effect that they are built to win Big Ten games.
All right. Along those lines, Sarge, I know you didn't watch the games. Maybe Crash took this one too, but should Rutgers put 8 offensive linemen on the field like Illinois did against Penn State? Do you think Shiano has lost the locker room, including players and staff? Wow, it's kind of out of nowhere, but it's a good, interesting topic. What I certainly haven't seen the team quit yet. What do you think, Cratch, on those 2 topics?
No, he has not lost the locker room. I don't think we've seen anything that indicates that. 8 offensive linemen on the field doesn't really get you anything.
Yeah, especially when you don't have 8 good ones.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, if you want to put an offensive lineman in the backfield at the wing or at fullback, okay, like that would be kind of creative. But just putting 8 guys on the line doesn't really accomplish much.
All right, barreling through these, a lot of questions about Cole Snyder. We addressed it a little bit. I mean, from the first part of this, how many years of eligibility does Cole Snyder have left? That was a very basic question. I think it's 3, but you correct me if I'm wrong. And why, if it's not working with Noah Vetral, why are they not trying Snyder is the question. Is this because of some BS from Shiano? People are getting frisky at the comments. The fan base and football alum are dumbfounded. Sarge, you want to take this one? Why are we not seeing some Cole Snyder?
It's so I hate to because I've challenged coaches through 20 years of covering this, but I have not. I think from what I've seen in practice, I could say this: that I think Vedral has outperformed Snyder on an everyday basis. Every practice I've been to, dating back to the beginning of August. I'm not the talent evaluator. I'm not the one who gets paid to make these decisions. So, but I will say that if I saw anything differently, I'd be banging the drum and asking Greg Schiano, pressing him on a little bit more. So I will say that at some point, and I don't think that the offensive issues are completely Noah Vedral's fault. But all that being said, he has the opportunity to kind of lift them up to greater heights and maybe try to overcome some of the offensive line flaws, and he hasn't done it. So at some point, every position is up for grabs. At some point, maybe you do have to, shake things up and either play again Wimsatt or Cole Snyder or Evan Simon, whoever you think is better. As far as the eligibility, I think it's 3. Cratch, am I wrong on that? 3 years?
So 3 years after this year. So redshirt in 2019, 2020 was a free year. This is his first real season. So he'll have 3 years of eligibility after this season.
It's not like he on the point about Shiano, it's not like he's been reluctant to pull quarterbacks in his history. I mean, he benched Ryan Hart for a freshman Mike Teal. I mean, he's a guy who he's made changes over the years. I mean, he's not, Go ahead, Chris.
I would say he has, but he has been very patient in his second tenure. Like they were like, go back to Purdue last year, where the team had been struggling. Vedril's out. Art and Johnny, that combination, they win a game on the road, exciting, and it basically was like, okay, great job, guys. Noah, back in. It's like they've been very committed to Noah Vedral.
Right. Yeah. That.
Even when Art was still here before he entered the transfer portal, because remember, Art, we're not going to relitigate Art Sikowski's time at Rutgers again. But when that season ended, they had won 3 games. Art had played a major role in 2 of the wins, and they were like, okay, so is Art going to get to compete for the job? And they said the right things, but it was very clear, no, he wasn't. Like, Vedral was already anointed the quarterback no matter what. So they've been very, very patient with him and stuck with him for a while now.
All right, a couple non-football questions. Friend of the pod, Alex from Marlboro, wants to know, Steve Peichel seems to be missing out on high target recruits for the class of 2022. Chris Bunch is committed to Syracuse, and Desmond Claude seems to be going elsewhere. Any updates on basketball targets? I know we don't follow this closely. I will say that you got to give Peichel he's got a philosophy guy. He's got a philosophy about team building. He's not looking for stars. He's not looking for, the top recruits. Rutgers traditionally hasn't gotten those players anyway. This is just the way he goes about, this is the way he goes about building teams. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, I go back, I talked to him a lot in Indianapolis at a Big Ten Media Day. And, he said, and I guess he said it again, during the media day in Piscataway, but he is going to recruit a certain guy, and he's going to build a relationship with him, and he's going to get to know everything about him. And that's just the way it's going to be. We've seen these guys, these under the radar guys, pan out and play really, really well. He values chemistry. He values, guys who fit his system. He values guys who, quite frankly, are going to play, stay at Rutgers for 3-4 years and get better as they go along. It's always a crapshoot, but I think he values his certain type of guy. And as far as like the transfer portal, he even said on the record that they did not offer a lot of guys. Where there were 1,500 guys in the portal, and Rutgers certainly had a few spots. He was very, very, very strict on who they were going to offer. And as far as he's concerned, he thinks that he got the two best guys.
Yeah, I think the problem they're running into now is that recruits want to know, when those positions are going to open up, when Paul McKay is going to leave, how long Ron Harper Jr. is going to be here, and he can't answer the question. Right? I mean, he's going to be loyal to those guys. So that's part of it as well. All right, a couple more before we dive into predictions here. Here's a good one, Chris, that maybe you can take. Guys like Hansen and Felter looked great last year along the offensive line, but barely seen the field this year. How does that happen? I mean, what's happening with personnel behind the scenes on this offensive line, do you think?
Well, I would say 2 things. One, CJ Hansen, I think, only played in 2 games last year, so I'm not really sure where that's coming from. I think he's a guy who just is developing. I mean, he was on the travel roster, which is somewhat of a sign, but he's an Ash era guy that is 3 years in the program. I mean, he's getting to the point now where it's probably, he's either going to play or he's not. As for Felter, I mean, I think he's a guy who he was one of the better options they had last year. I think he was up and down, but okay, solid. I just think he's been passed on the depth chart by guys like Gus Zielinskis and other, people they brought in. That's going to happen. I think that it's only his second year in the Big Ten, and true freshmen are not supposed to play in the Big Ten, the offensive line. It rarely happens. So I think a lot of times with offensive linemen, you can't really judge what a guy is going to be until they've been in the program for 2-3 years. And right now, Felter's still in that developmental window, so we'll see what happens.
Here's one more good one before we get the predictions. And it goes right into predictions, too. Can you talk about the ballot question on sports betting and how it might impact Rutgers? Would more people care? It's a great question, and I guess I've kind of stopped thinking about the ballot question because all indications are it's going to fail. And if you're following this, will be a ballot question about whether or not legalized sports betting should include New Jersey colleges, which is currently prohibited. Sarge is a man who has occasionally placed a legal bet. Do you think people would be more interested in Rutgers sports if they could bet on them? Would it make an impact? And is there any chance this thing passes?
Yes, I think it would.
You think it would make a difference? Okay.
I think it would create a difference. I do. Just from my circle of friends who and people who are not. Who are sports fans but are not like college football fans or whatever. I think and they do bet on other games or whatever. I think that seeing Rutgers in that line I think would generate interest for sure.
I would be living in a cardboard box if this goes through. I would have to vote against it. Cratch, what, you going to vote for it?
I'm not going to go into my Democratic decisions. Honestly, I
really
no
wow.
Just dropped us. Look at that. He just shut us down.
No. Honestly, I've given very little thought to this. It's not something that impacts my life much. But, no, I mean, I think Sarge is right. I think it could help the casual fan. I think that from like a Rutgers standpoint, it would be fascinating because what we've kind of seen in other states where they do have the schools on the books is all of a sudden then the schools want, integrity fees, which is basically code word for give us free money. So we've seen that, the NFL, that was the big thing, before they really kind of completely sold out. Now the Giants are like sponsored by FanDuel or something. They're like, well, we're getting integrity fees to educate our player. It's basically we want to cut. But I believe in West Virginia, Marshall and West Virginia do get some sort of integrity fee to part of it's like educate their players with the dangers of gambling. But it's going to be fascinating. I think that if we get to the point where pretty much every state has this and all these in-state teams are on the books, we're going to get to a point, like especially with football, injury report. Like they're going to have at some point, people are going to say, hey, if I'm betting money on Rutgers football, I kind of need to know who's playing and who's not playing before kickoff. And that's where it's going to get very, very fascinating.
All right. Good observations. Thanks, everyone, for your questions. As always, we appreciate it. All right, let's preview the Illinois game. Minus 7.5. I guess I'm not too surprised after the win over Penn State, and Rutgers has not 4-game losing streak has not looked competitive on that level. Cratch, you're going to pick the Illini. Tell us why.
The Lions minus 7.5?
That's what I have. You have something different? What do you have?
I saw it was like 2 last night. Here we go. Make something happen. I got a friend sets of this.
All right. Okay.
All right. So
maybe I'm looking at last year's line.
I just made this very interesting. It is Illinois minus 2.
Minus 2? Really?
And Rutgers is favored in some sports books.
Good grief. Minus 2. Okay. Well,
let's see. Let's see if there's been a lot of action on this game. Anyway, the line's moving. So anyway, okay. I'm going to go with Illinois 20-10.
20-10?
I think Illini will run for like 300 yards.
Okay. That's simple. So they don't have to throw the ball to win this game, you're saying? Okay.
I don't think so. I mean, I think they probably will. A little bit of Brandon Peters in here. We don't have an official diagnosis, but did not look good for Art, unfortunately, which is kind of a shame that we didn't get to see him play in this game. I'm sure he wanted more than anything in the world to play in this game. But
I'm sure Rutgers defensive coaches wanted him more than anything in the world to play in this game too. Let's be honest.
You say that. I know that's a funny message board retort, but
wow,
if Art had beaten Rutgers, it would have been not good. No bueno for the Scarlet Knights coaching staff. I think it's going to be a relatively low-scoring game. I think it's, classic Big Ten game, ugly, lots of punting, big Adam Korsak showcase. But I just think Illinois' ground game, that offensive line is better. They're better in the trenches, and they have run roughshod all over the Scarlet Knights for years now. I don't see any reason why it would change this week, especially after they had a huge game on the ground against Penn State. So Illinois 20, Rutgers 10, big rushing day for the Illini.
Sarge?
Yeah, I'm going to take Rutgers. I think it'll be low scoring. 2017 Rutgers. The one thing that Crash touched on is Illinois can run the ball, but they can't throw it. So, if Rutgers is able to, limit Chase Brown. Chase Brown's a dude. But beyond that, I mean, Rutgers is going to have to run the ball themselves too, because they really haven't done that in Big Ten play. Again, I think that they get healthier, and I think they win.
All right, I'm going to go with Rutgers too, and I've gone back and forth on this one. I certainly did not like what I saw at Northwestern, but I just think they're a better team than they showed. And this might, maybe after the bye week, maybe you get a better performance, a crisper performance. Illinois is no good. I think we've seen that. We're kind of discounting the fact that team is certainly, no world beater. So I'm going to pick a 24-14 Scarlet Knight victory. And we'll see if I'm wrong again. All right. So we all miss Northwestern. Kratch will have a chance to take a commanding lead, depending on what Brian Fonseca picks in this game in the standings. All right, what else we got, guys? We got some field hockey women's soccer to talk about here. We got national title contenders. We got a Big Ten trophy. Kratch writes the story about the Big Ten trophy on the bus, buckled into the seats, coming back from, where were they, Indiana?
They were Bloomington, Indiana.
Bloomington, Indiana. Tell us about this team, Kratch. I mean, is this a for real national title contender, or is it just a good year for the Big Ten? That's as far as it'll go.
No, I think it's a for real team. I mean, look. Here's the thing. Rutgers women's soccer obviously wins the first outright Big Ten championship in the history of the athletics department. They beat Indiana 2-0 on the road. They then drive west to Champaign, Illinois. The game gets pushed up a day because of weather. They beat Illini in Champaign, so undefeated in the Big Ten. I think they've won 11 straight now. And the way the Big Ten tournament stacks up, and then the NCAA tournament, they don't have to necessarily leave Piscataway until they go to the College Cup. If they win the Big Ten tournament, they'll have 3 games all at home. It was the top seed after the quarterfinals host the Final Four, and they would have 4 games at home in the NCAA tournament to get to the College Cup, which I believe is in Santa Clara, California, December. So that could be a nice little road trip for us.
Road trip.
Make it out there. No, they're for real. That I think coming into the back in August or something, we talked about how they need, offense was going to be the key for them. They kind of struggled to score goals, in the big games down the stretch in past years. That's not an issue. Amir Ali, Frankie Tagliaferri, they're scoring goals. Megan McClellan's been tremendous in goal. So they're a legit contender. I think field hockey obviously had a loss at Michigan. They're a team that is really good, and they'll definitely make the NCAA tournament, maybe make a couple rounds, but I think they have a little bit more of a ceiling than appear to have a little more of a ceiling than the women's soccer team does currently.
Excellent. Where's the field hockey Final Four again? Is that in
Ann Arbor, Michigan, I believe.
Ann Arbor, Michigan. Yep. Gotcha. I thought it was in
and men's soccer too is quietly. I think they probably have to do some damage in the conference tournament, but they also could potentially play themselves in somehow.
All right. So sorry, you got to put in for the trip. Can you drive to Santa Clara? Is there a steakhouse in Santa Clara worth?
Yes. To be clear, I think we're all 3 of us might be out to Santa Clara. Screw football. We don't need. Who would Rutgers football be playing that week? I guess they would be getting ready to play.
They'd be
Indiana. Oh yeah,
no,
you're right. It would
December 3rd.
Yeah,
is the that's the conference.
We'll be preparing for a bowl game at that point. So
Wow.
You might be, but.
Wow. All right. Well, anything else we got to cover before we go?
Wrestling starts in 2 weeks. Go to NJ.com. I was at APC for the first time in like 2 years. Saw practice. Q&A with Scott Goodell. They have Wrestling Media Day later this week before we jet off to Champaign.
See Viv back yet, Sarge?
She's not.
She's not. Okay.
No, I mean, we've talked about this ad nauseum. I think that's kind of. Yep.
Let that one go into the ether.
She's
Basketball
not,
opens November 10th against Lehigh. That's it. A lot going on. But first, it's Rutgers, Illinois, a kind of a game that will determine if we have anything left to talk about next week. And we'll be back to talk about it regardless. Thank you to everyone for listening. Signing off for Sarge and Kratch, Devco, and the rest. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.
You haven't heard enough from me yet, huh? Steve Politi here for one last thank you to this episode's sponsor, New Brunswick Development Corporation, and to listeners like you who make it all the way to the end of the show. We'll see you again soon.